Hi, I'm Amit Singh. I run an alternative media site called Consented, www.consented.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Dr. Annabelle Shomimo. I'm a junior doctor with an interest in sexual health, and I did my undergraduate medical anthropology dissertation on the black hair industry and beauty.
Hi, my name is Ricky Gardner. I work for a company, Revo Seekers. My views today are personal views. They're not views of the company. I'm not representing today, and I'm a very opinionated person.
Yes, as with all our topics, first thing we want to ask you, what is beauty? So starting from you, Amit.
I think, obviously it's quite an open-ended question. I guess in our modern society, beauty means one ideal, which is usually, for women would be white and very skinny, and for men would be white and quite muscular. And I guess in a Western society as a whole, beauty is an incredibly highly racialized ideal whereby anyone who's not white doesn't really have access to those terms.
Is this woman next to you beautiful?
I'm sure she's very beautiful, yeah.
Would she fit
I
into
wouldn't want to judge her based on her appearance alone.
Okay. Is beauty, one of the quotes we found of beauty is that beauty comes from within. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess so.
What about you, Ricky?
It's twofold, because I agree with what the gentleman said on the end in terms of society and how societies portray beauty. To me, beauty is the old cliche, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's who's looking and who's gazing into what they wish to and what they deem to be beautiful. Beauty coming from within, it once again comes from the eye of the beholder. If somebody's looking to look at the external, then that's their view of beauty. And if their view is the internal and the personality and what the person stands for and their ethos and all those things, then that's their view of beauty.
I'd like to give you...
So I acknowledge both of the opinions on either side. I agree with there's clearly an archetype of beauty, especially within Western culture, but I'm happy you brought up beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Coming from an anthropology kind of background, we have to acknowledge that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but that the beholder's eye is very much shaped from the society and the cultural background that person comes from, and that's often not within that person's control. So we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but how much control does the beholder have over those opinions that they end up having?
When you talk about beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I think the most interesting thing we found through our research is that there are companies which sort of function themselves as sort of beauty magazines or beauty sort of products of beauty. It can go so deep that there are physical representations, which could be models, or you could say including makeup and so on and so forth. If 1.6 million people do read a magazine which is classed as beauty, isn't that really really that a more uniform sense of beauty rather than in the eye of each one of those individuals?
Sorry, I might just put this microphone down. It's creating a really terrible sound. Bit better, hopefully. So are you essentially asking if 1.6 million people, a magazine has a readership of that amount, by subscribing to that magazine, are they then subscribing to that magazine's beauty ideal?
Precisely.
Well, I think there has to be, we all know that the media and the images around us have a huge influence on how we behave and how we feel towards ourselves and beauty ideals. What I'd say is by buying a magazine, you're buying into an idea that is being sold to you. People don't necessarily have those opinions or those beliefs to begin with. It's kind of a structure that's being created that you're buying into. So no, I don't think they're reinforcing that idea of beauty. If anything, that magazine can be forming their opinions. What comes first?
So it's the old question of, is it art before life, or does life interpret art, or is art an interpretation of life? Which one would you say comes first?
If you look at if we go back in history, and we're looking at beauty, or even if we're looking at male and female, for example, who deemed that blue was for boys and pink was for girls? Who viewed that men should wear trousers and women should wear skirts? So this is the same sort of concept where beauty comes from as well. Who deems that women looking in a certain way deems them beautiful, and men looking a certain way deems them beautiful? And then the issue then also is women's view of their own internal beauty, because women then quite often change their beauty. They make a new face, they put on different things to create a new visual that isn't actually them. So if that's the case, do they eternally see themselves as beautiful? Because if they did, why would they then change themselves?
Would you like to reply, Amy?
I think that's to do with like the image of beauty that's sold. If there's only one image of beauty that's sold to people, then a lot of people are going to strive to achieve that beauty norm. So, for example, if the image is a white beauty norm, then a lot of people are going to purchase skin whitening products and things like that to achieve that ideal of what society deems to be beautiful. And if beauty, we see it as a social construct, which I think it is, then the majority is going to influence the individual. And if all we see on billboards is sort of muscular white men or very skinny white women, then, and that image is reinforced to us through media and through magazines that we read and basically everywhere we look, then we're going to feel like that is what we should strive for. But obviously for a lot of people, those ideals of beauty are unattainable. And because those can't be attained, then it's going to lead to problems of sort of self-esteem and issues like that.
So my thing I struggle with personally is everything you said, we've all said I agree with. But it seems though, to me, women struggle with this concept of beauty more than men. Yeah? Men rarely...
Your faces did turn as soon as you said that.
I noticed, yeah? Men, you do have the Metro Man now who puts on a bit of makeup and what have you, but men generally, as you see me, is as you get me. That's not generally the same with women.
I'm not sure I agree with that, to be quite honest. Like, since 2007, I think the beauty sales to men have gone up about 70%. And I think there is now like a booming beauty industry for men. Obviously, it depends what you term to be beauty, but even things like moisturizing products, gym products like steroids, protein shakes, things like that can be deemed in many ways beauty products. And if you say like what you see is what you get, then I just think that's quite misleading, because obviously a lot of men are going to the gym manipulating their bodies in a lot of ways that aren't natural in order to attain a body ideal.
No, you're right.
To appear attractive.
So what we're agreeing then is...
Can I just jump in here as the only female currently here? And we're having a conversation on beauty, which I think actually the majority of people, they rightly acknowledge, we have to all acknowledge that within this society, women feel the biggest pressure, okay, as you said, for in terms of trying to obtain a certain archetype of beauty. Yes, men are starting to feel that pressure also, okay, but it isn't the same level of pressure. Just in terms of widening the discussion, okay, because the whole discussion is about measuring beauty, and we're at SOAS, which obviously deals with diversity and other cultures, okay. You can examine cultures all the world over, okay, and within our specific type of setting, women feel that pressure, okay, but you can examine lots of other societies where actually it's the men putting on makeup and it's the men that have jewellery, and this is a structure that, as you mentioned earlier, that we've created for ourselves. It isn't uniform, okay? We've been led to believe that this is a norm, so when people, when men wear makeup, it's seen as feminine. When they pierce themselves, it's seen as more feminine, or, you know, when women bulk up and want to look muscular, it's seen as masculine. These are the standards and beauty norms that we've set for ourselves in this society within our own culture.
Quick question.
I agree with that, but I think they've also
If I could just interject. Looking at this dude, would you say he feels pressure? Jordan James Park.
I'm not sure, okay, how many people are familiar with that specific individual, but he, with great pride, which touches upon something else I'll get to later. As a doctor, I'm very interested in cosmetic surgery and how that plays into our kind of ideas of beauty. He's gone to great lengths to enlarge his lips, and specifically because he puts Kim Kardashian on a pedestal and wants to look more like her. So yes, he obviously does feel pressure. He feels pressure because he wants to look like Kim Kardashian.
More like a woman.
I'm not sure that's. I think that's possibly again a standard that you've set for him. I'm not actually sure that's what he said about himself. That's again an opinion that's been drawn from an action that he's done. Typically, big lips are associated with black people. So are we looking at him and saying that he now wants to be black, just from him pumping up his lips? These are ideas that you've just extrapolated from a picture. I don't think he said that.
Would it be more correct if I said he wants to look more like a beautiful woman? Yeah?
No, I don't really see how we can draw these conclusions. Really, I don't think he's aiming for an ideal. He's obviously admires Kim Kardashian as a person, and again, I think because of the structure that we're in and how judgmental people are from certain actions, that we link certain things, such as Botox, lip fillers, with trying to be more womanly, whereas in other cultures it wouldn't be.
In your opinion, Jordan James Park has spent probably 150 grand to look like Kim Kardashian. Would you call that pressure? To look more beautiful?
Would I call it pressure? I wouldn't call it pressure. My personal opinion, I call it madness. Yeah, but I wouldn't call it pressure. But that's me. That's because I choose not to do anything. I was in LA, for example, and they were saying the best tattoo right now is no tattoo, because everybody's got a tattoo. Before, nobody really had tattoos, so tattoos made you more risky, more attractive, or more desirable than a certain way. Now it's a norm. So the best tattoo now is no tattoo. So it's what people deem at that moment to be what they view is the look of the time, some people. You can tell sometimes through tattoos the era they had it done because of the type of tattoo they had. So you know it was a trend. A lot of the things you're seeing are trends in a certain way. You had the trends of Jerry curl in one part. You have the trends of weave in another day. You have the trends of Botox in the lips. You have the trends. As something comes out, it's publicized, and you have to remember these things are coming from companies that want to make money. So from you have a company that's brought something out to make money, they're going to make it seem like this is something you want to do because they haven't done this for no other reason. I'm not going to say it's a strong-minded or a weak-minded person that's going to go for it, but there will be the pressure from society, from those powers that be that want to make the money from it to promote and push what they want to push, and people then will adhere to it or not adhere to it.
With that said, I mean, I'd like to ask, would you say these trends made from, say, okay, trends of beauty, so the next in thing, a tattoo, the best tattoo is no tattoo, or people wanting to imitate like Jordan James Park did, is it completely made through company interests, or is there such thing as an organic beauty trend?
I think within like a highly capitalist society that we live in, it almost certainly isn't organic, or at least it's manufactured in some way to maybe appear organic, but it's very unlikely to be organic. It's usually about creating wealth. For example, talking about male beauty products, they've been targeted a lot more at men recently, in the same way that beauty products have been like really aggressively targeted at women over the last probably like 30 or 40 years. So I think primarily it comes down to profit, and there's certain images are marketed in certain ways to certain different communities in order to make money.
I'm going to speak about an area that I probably know more about in terms of trends, okay? I did a lot of research on kind of black hair. It's what I'm really passionate about. I had relaxed hair which is when you put chemicals in it. I think the majority of people here probably know that. And then I cut it all off, and I grew my afro back, and I only had relaxed hair for about a couple of years. Okay, and I think there's a massive move at the moment for a lot of black women to have natural hair, okay, or there's an increasing move, okay, and for example, in America during the civil rights movement, a lot more women had natural hair. It was seen as a way of being black and proud. So just to counter that, I think sometimes you do have organic trends in beauty that are born out of a culture in the time and not necessarily capitalist in motivation. Because let me tell you now, natural hair, there is no money there because weaves are expensive, okay? And I think sometimes there is a natural backlash, okay, against certain beauty trends, which can be organic and not necessarily capitalist in their motivation.
Well said. Speaking of probably one of a taboo sort of beauty trends, and speaking since it was focused around black people, but broadly more darker in pigmentation, skin bleaching. Is that an organic beauty trend?
I think skin bleaching, okay, is obviously a highly complex and charged issue because contrary to appearances, it happens in so many different societies. It's very prominent within the Indian community. You get a lot of Fair and Lovely products. One of the hugest markets for bleaching is in Nigeria, and if you speak to a lot of Nigerian women that bleach, they'll tell you that it's got nothing to do with them not loving being Nigerian. It's more to do with a status symbol, okay? And it always often comes back to status, okay? And when you try and unpick what bleaching and status means, it means essentially that if you look fairer, that you look of a higher status. And then what does that mean? Well, essentially that you look more white. And I know Amit's going to probably have a lot to say on that issue, but it's obviously quite colonial. It's a colonial mentality. Sorry, there's a bit of rustling. Yeah, it's very colonial in its mentality. But then on the other end of the spectrum, increasingly within this concept, this setting, we see people tanning much more than they did previously, okay? And I'd argue that specifically within the Western setting more, and not necessarily Western multicultural setting, more and more people are actually trying to move to a middle ground, okay, where racial...
What is the middle ground?
So where people feel that actually racial ambiguity or people of a mixed hue are considered more attractive. Time, about 5 years ago, had a front page article of saying that this is the new kind of this, by 2020, all Americans will kind of look like this middle ground, mixed, ethnically ambiguous, and that's now being touted in multicultural settings, okay, as being more attractive than the Eurocentric beauty ideal.
If I do cut you in just quickly, what I find interesting about that is if we went back 10, 15 years ago, there was no option of middle ground. If you looked on a job application, or even 20 years ago, maybe I go back first, it was only clear cut, you're black or you're white. This middle ground, I think, is quite interesting. But in reference to what you're saying, I'd like to ask Ricky quickly, doesn't it kind of, not to misquote Amit, kind of prove what he's saying, that if skin bleaching is such, maybe not even classed as a corporate trend, more of an organic trend, then beauty really is, beauty is being white?
Not necessarily so much white. When you go to certain countries, it's not that people are white, it's more that people of a lighter skin get certain jobs, get certain careers, get certain opportunities in certain countries. This is still forced, yes, by the caste system and Eurocentric view of this is about power and what happened with the colonization of Africa and different things, and who they wanted to let through the door and who not to let through the door. through that, you have some people who have lightened their skin so they feel that they will be in a different part of society. Yeah, but as, sorry, your name is? Annabelle said, you have the other side of the spectrum with people bleaching. And there's no concerns there's no conversations about it. There's no, like, you have an interview up there with a person who's bleaching, but we don't see people bringing people on TV to talk about why they're tanning. What is this necessity for them to darken their skin? But in the same instance of darkening their skin, still may have certain racial hatreds. So it's a very complex subject, and it is really, you could talk to one person and get one answer, you could talk to another person and get a totally different answer. Yeah?
Good question. Amit, where does it come from, in your opinion?
I think that, for example, with tanning, there's like a long history of the dominant culture. For example, in our case, white culture or white people, dare I say, picking and choosing different aspects of ethnicness or things that are deemed to be ethnic or not white, and taking them and like sort of appropriating them in some way. So they might want to tan, but they might still not really like brown people. They might still not want to like go into their local like sort of Indian corner shop, but they'll still want to tan, but they won't associate it as like a sort of racial thing in the same way that a lot of white women might want to aspire to like having a large bottom, for example, which could be associated with people who are black, but at the same time will not actually be like black people very much. It's just it's a case of like, yeah, people picking and choosing different aspects of these different cultures, whilst at the same time still deeming them inferior.
This woman was a former model for Cameroon. She's going to explain in a minute. And you'll see what she looked like before and in comparison to what she looks like now.
Active Media Group, exposing your genius.